Basically, this is just a compilation of things I wish I knew before I started digital art. This all happens on medibang, except for my sketch, but we'll get back to that later. I do all my sketches on Notability because it has a good scissor tool, and since I do that, I can just take the entire picture, and they'll give you an option when you hit select an image to add, when you add a layer, and then they'll give you an option to extract lines. Just hit extract lines, and you can adjust it how you need to, and don't protect the layer, and so you can draw straight onto it. This also works with paper drawings. You can extract the lines and throw it into the program. You can draw straight onto it, or you can just use this as an underlying sketch and go over. It's an 8-bit layer always when you extract the lines, so I always go into and change the color of the layer because I don't like sketching over black. But if you do choose to use the image as just a sketch and you want to do line art over it, I suggest you use big swooping lines when doing line art. A lot of people do like little itty bitty lines as they sketch, but that won't really give you a nice clean line art. Just use really big swooping lines. If you feel like you're not getting like a straight line you need, or like kind of just like a smoothness, you can up the line correction really high. Line correction automatically straightens or helps your lines for you. But if you have a line correction really high, you will not get like angles and stuff, so just keep that in mind. The paint bucket tool is awesome. It's a great tool to color things in really quickly and get your base colors in. But sometimes it can be really obnoxious because the gaps aren't completely closed and the paint spills over everywhere. But you can fix this by using the close gaps tool, which is on the other side if you go to the bucket, and it's under anti-aliasing and expand. Close gaps will basically just close the gaps for you, so those tiny gaps won't matter. Expand is exactly what it says. It expands the paint area, and that's really good for brushes with like rough pencil because they tend to leave itty bitty gaps. The boxy lines are just it's just like a cut and remove tool, so you can like move it over. You can also transform it. You can like change the size and the like angle of it. Like mesh transforms allow you to do basically anything. If you are holding this down, you can see in the little corner where it looks like there's two papers on top of each other, you can use that to copy or paste. Clipping is the tool I wish I knew the most about when I first started digital art. For the first 2 years, I did not know about clipping at all because my first program did not support it. But after I found out, I was actually kind of angry because it's super helpful and super time saving. Usually when I shade over a color, the base layer or whatever, I just add the layer on top and I just color straight onto that. Actually, there's an easier way. If you just hit that clipping button right under Protect Alpha and under the opacity place, you can draw straight onto that layer without going outside the lines or anything, which is super helpful and great. It'll just color straight onto what you did, the layer you clipped it to, which is awesome. With this in mind, I do say be sure to separate the colors, like your base color layers, to use clipping to its fullest, because let's say if I had his hair and his eyes on the same layer, then his hair shading would bleed a lot into his eyes, and that would be annoying. Clipping is great because it's not only helpful for shell shading and putting down like the fundamental like shadows or whatever, but it's also really great for adding a lot of depth and color to it, because with clipping I can, it's probably hard to see what I'm doing, but I'm adding like different shades of yellow into his hair, and it just makes it look a lot nicer and cool. I don't know how to put it. I usually only use rough pencil for illustrations. When doing comics, I just use straight, just do the cell shading and everything is in the regular pen. But rough pencil gives a really interesting texture and you can do all kinds of fun things with it. I just think it looks a lot nicer. And the texture is really fun to play with. I just think it feels more like an illustration. I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, that's just my 2 cents. Bad advice. Woo! Okay, anyways. Next we're going to talk about Protect Alpha, which is right above the clipping. Protect Alpha works just like clipping, except it's directly on the layer you're working on. So with clipping, you're working on the layer underneath that. Oh, one more thing about clipping. Clipping only works to like one layer. Like you can't clip on a clipped layer, but you can use Alpha Protect on a clipped layer. So now you can do all that, that whole shading thing about adding different yellows on that shade. Now you can do it on the shadows itself, which is just cool. Next, I'm going to talk about, what's it colored lines. Colored lines, I generally use airbrush for colored lines. you go to with the Protect Alpha we just learned about, and we go to your liner layers, or layers if you're like me, and you go ham with colored lines. You take the airbrush over it, and I say you can use pen, but airbrush gives it like a smoother, more like it blends in together look. You can either use like the actual version of the color, or I recommend kind of just messing around with the color wheel. Who gives a crap about color theory, right? Let's add blue there. Anyways, here's my first sketch to my kind of finished piece. Woo! Yay! Bonus rounds of things I forgot about. Woo! How to tilt your artwork. You hit that transform tool, you grab the edges of the box, not the points, but the edges, and you just go for it, go ham, spin around. Another thing on clipping, you can do cool things with gradients using clipping. I'm using on the hair layer, I clip onto the hair layer, I go to my 2 color swatches and I choose colors I want, and then boom, Belle has gradient hair. That is neat. It's really useful if you don't want to spend a ton of time blending and stuff. When you want to make it like a straight line, like just like a straight like level line, I don't actually recommend using the straight line tool. Use the rectangle tool and go all the way off the page, or just erase the extra lines. Sometimes that straight line tool is not level and it's obnoxious to mess with, so just go ahead and use the rectangle tool. It's cool. And that's all for me. If you have a question, drop in the comments. Yeah. Tell me about more tools I missed, things that would make my life easier so I can be mad about it. See you later.